The Walking Dead, 28 Days Later, Resident Evil, World War Z, The Last of Us, Call of Duty Zombies. Over the years, we've seen a lot of people take a stab at showing us their version of zombies across games, movies, and shows. And from all of that, one big trend crawled out from the grave: the zombie apocalypse. The fall of civilization at the hands of the living dead. The majority of humanity infected, the world's militaries overwhelmed, and society crumbling under the weight of its own corpse pile. But I've got a bone to pick with that idea. If one of these apocalypses actually happened, it'd go horribly wrong. For filmmakers, that is. Because most versions of the zombie apocalypse would get mopped up before you even finished your popcorn. Don't believe me? Well, let me get my pound of flesh from this rotting genre real quick. Yeah! Welcome to Basic Recruit. Get those notebooks on your desk and listen up. The Z's come in three broad types: biological Z's, necromantic Z's, and magical Z's. Here's the breakdown. Biological Z's are still living humans infected with a biological agent that hijacks their brain chemistry, boosting aggression, killing reason, and tanking their IQ faster than a TikTok comment section. Some strains create hive mind drones, others just turn people into feral rage machines. Necromantic Z's are your classic reanimated corpses, the fully dead brought back through whatever means. Sometimes it's viral, sometimes it's pure black magic. Think undead by technicality. Magical Z's are the god tier nightmares, spawned or enhanced through straight up arcane nonsense. They can be stronger than humans, ignore bullets, use magic, or, eat a missile for breakfast. This hierarchy isn't ironclad, but realistically, it's pretty close to weakest to strongest. Biological Z's still suffer from all the boring human limitations: disease, hunger, exhaustion. Necromantic Z's are tougher. You've usually got to just destroy the brain. Magical Z's, though, those bastards are practically DLC content. Smarter, faster, and infinitely more unfair. Yeah! Listen close, kid. I'll only tell you once. An apocalypse with biological walkers? Highly unlikely, honestly. Walkers are about as strong as a normal human in every way. Their arm swings, which are usually more of a slap than a punch, would hit around 120 to 150 psi, pounds per square inch. In practice, probably lower. Their motor coordination is shot, and with their brains turned to soup, most of their attacks would be wild, unbalanced flailing. Their bite is what you gotta really watch out for. A human bite clocks in at around 120 to 160 psi, though some outliers can hit 200 psi for short bursts. Walkers might stay near the upper end. No, hey, don't bite so hard your teeth explode signals left in the brain. But even then, their jaws aren't built for puncturing through any real defenses. Their body fluids, saliva, blood, vomit, whatever, are the real threat. A single droplet in your eyes, nose, mouth, or an open wound could infect you. If we imagine the infection behaving like a rabies-Ebola hybrid, you're looking at a near 100% fatality and transmission rate. But that only matters if it gets into you, and that's a big if. The thing is, all that can be stopped with even basic armor. Thick leather, around 3 to 4 millimeters thick, can resist up to 400 psi of pressure before tearing. That's 2 to 3 times stronger than a human bite. Even standard cowhide jackets offer impressive resistance. High-end gear like Kevlar reinforced leathers can take up to 1,200 pounds per square inch before puncturing. So, slap on some road leathers, those old boots you have, and a motorcycle helmet with a face mask, and congrats, you're practically immune to their attacks. Now, if you want to really flex, grab a riot suit. Polycarbonate plates, Kevlar padding, and a ballistic face shield. Their fingernails would rip off, and their teeth would shatter before they even left a scratch. Even if things were dire, a thick winter coat would give you a surprising amount of protection. Their crushing force would still suck, but a person isn't biting through all of that. Humans, as you might have noticed, being one and all, are pretty squishy. Walkers may not feel pain, but they're still subject to biology's unpaid bills. They can't heal wounds while shambling around constantly, meaning every injury accumulates. Step on a nail, that's probably going to be infected. Deep cut, sepsis, and that's
game!
They would even suffer from starvation. A human can survive roughly 3 weeks without food and 3 days without water. That's assuming a normal metabolism. But a constantly shuffling, mindless creature, they're going to be burning calories and fluids constantly. Walking around that much, even at a slow rate, would use thousands of calories. So without feeding, that would potentially be fatal in a week. By the 2-week mark, the leftover walkers would look like skeletons held together by pure stubbornness. And worse yet, temperature. A normal human starts losing motor control below 90 degrees Fahrenheit core temp and dies by 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Meaning one chilly night in the Rockies or something, and the whole horde's going to wake up as popsicles. Meanwhile, heat stroke hits at 104 degrees in freedom units. One summer day in Arizona, and they'll cook like a brisket. Those accumulated injuries come with blood loss. With open wounds, assuming 5 liters of total blood, even slow bleeding of 50 milliliters per minute, which is barely visible, would kill them in under 2 hours. Because they don't bandage themselves or take time to stop moving and agitating wounds, they'd leak like an overripe tomato. Survivors would throw homemade caltrops, broken glass, or nails across the ground to farm kills. Note, even 10 to 15 milliliters a minute is fatal after 6 to 8 hours. Better yet, poisons. Survivors can wipe out huge hordes using ethylene glycol or antifreeze, rat poison, or any other substances you can find with a little skull graphic on the back. Ever seen how many cleaning chemicals, when poured together, make chlorine gas? If you really want to go in, raid a hospital for very powerful drugs. For instance, 2 milligrams of fentanyl is lethal. If you're feeling especially chaotic, you could even raid the local trap house when the apocalypse hits. They already got the inventory. If the infected go to drink, dump some poisons or drugs downstream. Lay out some meat, put some poison in it. Their digestive system is still biological after all, and things that would kill you and me would kill them too. Of all walker types, these are the least likely to cause a true apocalypse. They would still suck if this happened in a major population center, though. Infantry alone could handle the outbreak, and the military in full would mop it up like a training exercise. Tanks, drones, airstrikes, and automatic weapons would annihilate them in hours. Need proof? The M249 squad assault weapon, used by the American Armed Forces since '84, fires 850 rounds per minute of 5.56 by 45 NATO, each bullet punching through flesh with over 1,300 joules of freedom. It's an apocalypse, alright. For a cleanup crew, that is. Flamethrowers would also work great, but OSHA might not be too happy with flamethrowers in an urban area. Even SWAT could just go block to block Swiss cheesing the ops. Am I cool yet? Or just driving over them in their armored vehicles. And even if it got out of hand, the military has nerve gas, napalm, tactical nukes, and probably some stuff laying in storage they've just been itching to use. There wouldn't be a collapse of civilization, just a long week for the soldiers and especially whoever's responsible for this outbreak. Even in the worst case, a The Last of Us type scenario, the biology doesn't hold up. Cordyceps can't pilot dead bodies, and these bodies would surely die quickly. Even the spores would be nerfed in reality, not spreading in large clouds, but instead in very small areas around the fungus. Even worse for that game is that the infected would often kill their targets, which means even more limited spread. Most people would be killed rather than turned, slowing the spread of the infection. Even the food spread mechanism, which is a great concept of cordyceps, is unlikely, as high temps like in a microwave or oven and the low pH of our stomachs would kill the spores before they could truly infect us. But anyway, this isn't a debunk of The Last of Us. On to the next chapter. Yeah! Alright, soldier. These next ones are the classic undead. You know, the one you actually think of when someone says zombie. The ones that don't breathe, don't bleed, maybe, and definitely don't pay tax to this here United States of America. And we just can't be having that now, can we? This is a necromantic class. Here's the kicker for the so-called zombie. If they're dead, their brain isn't firing. No signals, no heartbeat, no nervous system activity. Of course, normally that means your body is done, only useful as chow for worms, as responsive as a box of hammers. So for these things to move, whatever's controlling them has to replace the brain's function, down to muscle coordination, sensory feedback, and balance control. Altogether, that's a staggering computational load, especially for a foreign body. Think of it this way. Your brain, right? sends millions of tiny electric pulses throughout your body every single second. To puppeteer a corpse, this controller would have to replace that network absolutely perfectly. Imagine driving your car from your phone screen using Bluetooth, every aspect, including the pedals and shifter. Just like that, one mistimed signal, and this zombie smacks its face into the nearest wall. No matter what force is running the show, fungus, parasites, curses, or freaking 6G towers, it still needs energy. Muscles don't work on willpower alone. Without oxygen and glucose, they stop contracting, unless this controlling mechanism is controlling the zombie through pure electrical stimulations, which would require an ungodly amount of energy. Anyway, this thing would have to metabolize something, either by burning the host's remaining flesh or absorbing energy throughout the environment. Somehow. If it's the more reasonable option there, the first one in case that wasn't clear, the corpse is on a time limit. Once decomposition starts, your muscles release enzymes that digest themselves, like auto-cannibalization on a molecular level. And within 48 hours, your tissue is mushy, and within a week, your tendons are too. At that point, the flesh bag is just that, a fleshy bag of probably mostly liquid that smells horrid. So realistically, a necromantic outbreak is past its expiration date from jump. From there, it's just putrefying. Basically, unless the controller can find new hosts before its current one melts, it's playing a losing game. Now, some versions eat flesh, others want only brains. But why brains, I hear you ask? Well, brains are jam-slammed stacked with tasty lipids, sugars, and electrolytes. Perfect energy source if you're a post-mortem brain-hijacking parasite who thrives on that sweet neural tissue. This isn't symbolism, as much as I'd like to act like a high school English teacher and dig way too deep into nothing. It's just, lunch. That said, though, this raises another problem. If the Z eats up the brain, it is also destroying a potential control center, like chewing out your car's steering column. So either these things are incredibly stupid, or the brain craving is just it, for some really odd reason, voicing its desire to spread, which opens up a whole new can of worms how the undead can speak. But let's not touch that and just move on. Even if the controller is quite efficient, it's not efficient enough to outpace entropy. So, let's do some quick napkin math. A fresh corpse in 70-degree weather decomposes in 10 to 14 days, while cooler weather might slow it at 3 to 4 weeks. Hotter weather, meanwhile, lowers this down to 3 to 5 days. Adding in the energy drain from the constant movement and the self-cannibalization for energy, and oh boy, this thing is falling apart faster than a cheap IKEA chair that I was asked to build. Anyway, that means the outbreak is actually self-limiting. The necromantic Z's would literally rot themselves out of existence unless continually replenished. Even worse, after a short time, the puppets would probably be blind. Eyes, you see, are incredibly fragile, and it just so happens that they cloud over within hours of death. Regardless, while sight is intact, this controlling force would need to somehow read and interpret input from the optical nerves without the brain active. Keep in mind, most of the things you'd expect to control a brain do not have eyes, nor any way of processing visual stimuli. Guess they just figured this out. For reference on how hard it is to get all of this right, even human neuroscience would be incapable of replicating this feat. Same situation with hearing. Eardrums dry out and crack. The only sense they might actually have that could function is touch. But without oxygen, those nerve endings would be dead. Once again, we're assuming that this controller would even be capable of interpreting touch. So, in the event that these things are actually shambling around, they'd be guided by metaphysical GPS or something. And that's not a necromantic zombie, that would fall into the next category. Yeah! Alright, soldier, your textbooks are useless here. Maybe try holy water? Everything we talked about till now, thermodynamics, neuroscience, decomposition, forget it, that's all trash. These creatures here don't care about biology or physics. Welcome to the magical class, where...
Right hand on the Bible, God can strike me down if I'm lying? That motherfucker's cheating! Take my word!
Biological Z's made sense. Even necromantic Z's had at least some logic. But the magical Z? Nah, we're gonna need an HR meeting with God. Because these guys spit in the face of all things natural and logical. They don't merely bend the rules, they chew them up and spit them back out, a 12-foot nightmare fuel flesh chimera. They don't have a mechanic on how they function, they just decide that they do, and it happens. 1. Call of Duty Zombies. These guys may start off weak, but they real quickly become the gym bros of undeath. They can tank rockets, sprint indefinitely, and always know where you are. They don't need to eat, can survive in space, and will never tire. And due to them following the will of whomever controls Element 115, they are all connected like a hive mind, so they can coordinate if the controller decides they do so. Let's also not forget, they can occasionally pilot mechs and wear power armor, just in case you thought them running was overpowered. The only reason humanity survives even a short time with these guys running around is just plot armor. There's a reason why in Moon they had to blow up the planet. 2. Evil Dead's Deadites. You don't even need to say it. These guys are a questionable inclusion. But I need 3 big names, and I also want an excuse to rant about Evil Dead. Now, let's actually get into said rant. These guys are arguably worse. You don't need to be bitten, scratched, or even touched. A single drop can turn you. Think Rage Virus, but way worse. They're also not stupid. They can talk, manipulate, and sometimes merge into what can only be described as a human chimera or Cerberus. All that is pretty awful, but it gets worse. They take your soul when they take over your body. So, 1 drop of blood can same day ship your soul straight to eternal torment. Most people fighting back don't actually know this, but I'd imagine you'd be a whole lot more nervous knowing that one mistake can end you in going to hell. There's also the fact that if you're not mentally strong enough, a demon can just possess you without any real contact needed. So basically, there's no cure, no bargaining, and no containing these things. So if these are your opponents, you better have some deep holes dug, a chainsaw all filled up, and a boomstick loaded. 3. Dead Space Necromorphs. Now rather than magic and COD, or supernatural and Evil Dead, we move to Eldritch Zombies. In the most cosmic nightmare fuel way, the Necromorphs are created by an alien beacon transmitting a psychic signal that reanimates dead tissue and makes it into razor-limbed murder sculptures. There's no virus, no pathogen, just a code. You hear it, you lose your mind, then you die and come back as one of the worst things in fiction. As long as there is a transmission, every corpse is raw material, and the only way to stop this spread is by somehow destroying each creature nearly in their entirety, or just entirely erase the planet or vessel you're on, because this one is not going to die easily. They break every rule of biology and coding. Masses of meat made by divine malware. Also, fun fact, I got this game when I was a kid. I didn't make it past the intro because I was too scared. But it feels much better knowing that some adults barely make it past a few minutes. Still horrifying. Magical zombies don't follow the logic that limits biological or necromantic outbreaks. They don't decompose, tire, and often instantly infect hosts. That, or it bypasses any traditional infection vectors. When attacked by these, your immune system is useless. Barriers are useless, and quarantine is useless. You nuke the planet these guys are on, and they'll scatter from under the rubble like a bunch of roaches. There's a reason why the zombies in Call of Duty survive the Earth being shattered in the Moon Easter egg. Regardless, the very concept of survival is out the window when faced with more than 2 of these infected. Basically, biological zombies lose pretty easily to most of our defenses. Necromantic has some potential, but their weaknesses would require magic to overcome. And magical zombies are just unfair, because they don't really have any weaknesses. Survival chance, tier list, speedrun. Biological, strength, 3 out of 10, S tier, light work. Necromantic, strength, 5 out of 10, C tier. Not too hard, but they're kind of tanky. Magical, strength, I have no idea. Triple F tier, we're cooked. Anyway, this was my Halloween tribute. Hope you enjoyed it. If you thought this was a good take, subscribe for more creature reworks, weird biology dives, and other sciencey ventures. If you thought it sucked, fair, I'll try harder next time. Got ideas for future videos? Toss them in the comments below. Either way, thanks for watching, have a great day, and I'll see you next time.